This week's vlog is centered around constructions of child and childhood with connections to our image of the child. I'm going to be drawing on the work of Dr. Karin Murris, a lecturer and mentor I worked very closely with at UCT, with specific reference to her book, The Posthuman Child. Karin has created 4 labels of the child. Child as small I, child as capital I, child as II, and child as III. Child as small I is the scientific cognitive child. This is the idea that the child develops through stages and that there are specific benchmarks in a child's development as well as scientific rationality. The child is seen as an object of study, and until that child has fully developed into an adult, they are viewed as unknowing and immature. The problem with this view is that it is assumed that the child needs guidance and control. Teaching takes place with the teacher positioned as the master or the expert, and the child positioned as the passive object to be measured. Here, the perspectives of adults are championed, and the views and voice of each child are silenced as they are seen as lacking maturity. Child as capital I is the child with human rights. This is the idea that each individual child has a set of rights and is a being with agency and power over their practices. Incorporating this idea about child in practice is difficult, especially in families that are quite hierarchical. The problem in Africa is that the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child has added a list of responsibilities children have towards their parents and communities in return for the rights that they have been assigned. A child's freedom in Africa is balanced by making explicit that children need to respect their superiors at all times. This is good and well, but children are viewed as innocent and lacking responsibility, and are therefore most often not granted the freedom to put forward their own voices and act on their own agency. There is the idea that adults need to protect and control children's lives. Child as II is the social child. This takes into account the influence society has on the child's formation of self and identity. It is the idea that the child's interactions with others shapes their idea of who they are and what their purpose is. The problem with only having a social constructionist view of the child is that the child is positioned as a subject to be studied through a representation. The child is constantly being compared in relation to what is around them. Instead of further reinforcing social binaries, which are power-producing and discriminatory, we need to move towards deconstructing this binary logic. Karin Murris proposes that we view each child as a part of the world, rather than in it as an object in a particular space and time. Here comes in the idea of the child as III, the posthuman child. The child is constituted by a number of forces, social, political, and biological, are all interwoven. Each child is entangled in relations with the human and non-human, existing together in lived experiential encounters. We need to remember that we cannot separate the child from the world because the child will bring his or her feelings, relationships, and experiences with them wherever they go. Teachers, parents, and children all come into Small World with different pieces of the world attached to them, affecting their everyday encounters. Just as the environment at Small World has an effect on each child, so does each child have effect on this environment. The environment grows out of a relationship, or many relationships, between child, teacher, and parents. In this way, we can think of our school as a living organism. Loris Malaguzzi says, "All of this is a great forest. Inside the forest is the child. The forest is beautiful, fascinating, green, and full of hopes. There are no paths. Although it isn't easy, we have to make our own paths as teachers and children and families in this forest. Sometimes we find ourselves together within the forest, sometimes we may get lost from each other, and sometimes we'll greet each other from far away across the forest, but it's living together in this forest that is important." Teaching and learning together here at Small World is co-constructive. We as teachers work with the children, who work with each other, who work with the environment. We are constantly encountering the other. In viewing each child as tightly connected to the world, we can see that the child is constantly emerging, producing, and becoming in relation to everything that exists around them. We see each child as full of potential in this current moment, bringing with them their lived experiences and relations with the world around them.